What's going on, everybody? So, I have reached my limit with society at this point. We're going to go ahead and have a discussion on science, and I can get back to politics later. I'm going to be doing more videos, as I said. I'm going to go ahead and address this as clearly and concisely as I can to the world full of institutions and people with prestige and prominence and clout constantly acting as if I do not exist and the work that I did does not exist. So, we're going to break this down beginning to end real quick in baby language. For anybody that understands anything about Richard P. Feynman, who said that you should be able to break things down like they're simple to be able to explain them, or you shouldn't be teaching anybody anything. You remember that when you have a bunch of astrophysicists trying to shove three chalkboard equations down your throat. Okay? The more elaborate it is, the more ridiculous. That's as simple as it gets at this point. So, my work started with pi. I'm going to get back to that here in 30 seconds. This is all ToE equation, beginning to end. Godel's proof. No set of axioms can prove their own consistency. Translated into English is no rule can validate itself. Okay? The rule of exceptions. All rules must have an exception in order to be valid. All rules. So let's think about this for a second. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm dealing with my teeth at the moment, still adjusting to this shit. So, if I have this correct, we have a rule that we use in all of science that says that every rule must have an exception to be valid. That's a rule. It needs an exception, period, by its own decree. And you say, well, I mean, it can be its own exception. No. Godel was very clear. Godel, one of those guys that you worship, is a super smart guy, right? He said that a rule cannot validate itself. Common sense, pretty common sense. So where are you stuck here? A ToE equation, a theory of everything, is actually required by our own scientific rules that we use to this day. It is a requirement. It is an absolute. The ToE equation is not just maybe, possibly, it could be a thing. When you actually look to the rules that we already have, that we use daily, you have a rule here that says that every rule must have an exception. And another rule here that says no rule can validate itself. Godel told the rule of exceptions it needs a fucking exception. What is the exception to a rule that all rules must have an exception? What is it? What is it? A rule with no exceptions. Yeah, one singular rule with no exceptions. It is the only way to have an exception to validate the rule of exceptions. It must be done. Because of Godel, okay? Because of Godel, because I actually understand this crap that you all ignore, okay? So what does Godel do? Godel says no set of axioms can prove their own consistency. No rule can validate itself. Well, this provides an interesting concept. It is beautiful by design. The exception to the rule that no set of axioms can prove its own consistency is one set of axioms that does prove its own consistency. Godel validates the rule of exception, okay? Godel is necessary to validate the rule of exception. The rule of exception is necessary to validate Godel. So there is one rule, the ToE equation, that has absolutely no exceptions. One rule, the ToE equation, that is one set of axioms that proves its own consistency. Without a ToE equation, Godel is invalid. Without a ToE equation, the rule of exceptions is invalid. We use both of them as a scientific fact. The theory of everything, the ToE equation, is an absolute scientific fact that must exist based on current rules. Tell me I'm wrong. Fight with me. Hop in my comments. Do a podcast with me. I want to rip you to shreds. So we'll get back to pi and equilibriums, where all of this started. Where some of this ends up is Nash's equilibrium, okay? You want to know how anything actually works? It's all dichotomy logic. Dichotomy logic. Well, how does that apply to Nash? Mathematics, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, because you're stupid. So what happens? Dichotomy logic. If it exists, its equal opposite exists. Fact. 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 We already know it as a fact. It is a basic fundamental thing for all of wait a second. We're talking about the theory of everything. We're talking about the basic fundamental structure of all things, just like Dr. Cuckoo said. Dr. Cuckoo said it's a basic fundamental structure. Well, I mean, we should be talking about basic fundamental stuff then, right? You think? Maybe? Like the dichotomy logic we use applied to everything. So, what do you have? You have, if there's yes, there is no. If there's a beginning, there is an end. And if there is a life, oh, no, wait. If there is a birth, there is a death. The proper dichotomy is birth and death, not life and death. Life is the third option that exists because birth and death exist. Are you still following me? Maybe exists because yes and no exist. A middle exists because a beginning and end exist. So what about Nash? What about pi? Well, this is very simple, actually, if you're not an idiot. Protons and neutrons, a proton, neutron, comes together to make a nucleus. Simple. Simple. Because you have a nucleus, you have a valence shell. Simple. Okay? A sperm and an egg, they come together to make a zygote. Because you get a zygote, you get a womb or an embryonic sac, whichever you want to call it. Valence shell, electron, doesn't really matter. It's the same. So, because of these dichotomies, you have third options. Really simple. Okay? When you get to mathematics, which is, oh, that's what Nash was doing, was using math to prove equilibrium work. He started with math. So let's not pretend that I'm somehow being weird here. What is pi? Height and width come together to make a plot. Because it's a plot, there's a breadth. It's automatic. The same way that if there's a nucleus, there's a valence shell. If there's a zygote, there is a womb. Height and width make a plot. But also, that parameter bubble is automatic. You have established a height and a width. It is automatic. Just like when you make a nucleus, you make a valence shell. It is automatic. So what's your mathematics here? What's your quantifications? Quantity versus quality. How do you do any of this? Well, height equals 1.0. Width equals 1.0. Breadth equals 1.0. Pi equals 3.1415. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Pi should equal 3.0. Everybody's been arguing that for years. It doesn't make any sense. Pi should be 3.0. Why doesn't? I don't know. It's just super smart science people stuff. Who can really figure that out? It's pretty simple. Nash already did. Equilibriums generate greater than sums. Okay, so when you put a proton, neutron, electron together, you get an atom. You put a sperm and egg and a womb together, you get a baby. Any of these collectives, once you generate an equilibrium, creates a greater than sum. Mathematics proved it regarding replacing oligopoly. That is what Nash actually did, was proved oligopoly wrong. Okay? What he proved was that when Democrats and Republicans when Pepsi and Coca-Cola compete against each other, they generate more revenue. Oh, well, maybe I was talking about Democrats and Republicans in the two-party system. Because when they compete against each other, they gain more power. Okay? The same as Coke and Pepsi pretending to hate each other. Democrats and Republicans pretend to hate each other. This is the math applied to the actual physics and economics and all of the stuff that the math does. Because math is just an abstract representation of everything around us. Okay? Literally all of it. We can use math on it. Period. Okay? So what happens is you generate an equilibrium. Equilibriums generate greater than sums. When this means in economics, the one place where it was applied, not all of them, one place where this was applied, economics, it means that Pepsi and Coke should compete with each other. If Pepsi works by itself, it makes $100 a year. If Coke works by itself, it makes $100 a year. But when Coke and Pepsi compete against each other, they both make like $1,000 a year. Now, one of them might have 700 and the other one might have 300, but it doesn't matter because they still generate overall more money than they would have if they were working by themselves, which is the same exact stuff that was applied to Democrats and Republicans. Why don't you understand that? Because you didn't study the Cold War, you didn't study Jonathan Nash, you didn't study anything that was going on and why he was spitting in the face of oligopoly. All of his work was applied to the politics, okay? The equilibrium work. The Coke and Pepsi compete against each other. Why do you think that ever since Nash's equilibrium, the two-party system has been the most sold lie in our entire existence? Because it helps perpetuate them making more money, more power. The same as Coca-Cola and Pepsi. They're fucking red and blue, for Christ's sake. It's like putting a hat on a hat. Okay? How do you all not notice these things? How do you not pay it? Oh, yeah, because you're busy with your World Star Hip Hop back in the day, or now you got 18 different fucking streaming services, and you just want to chill. You're just so stressed out. Ugh. You don't study. You don't care. You just go online and cry about effing politics and cry about science and 3i Atlas is a bunch of aliens. Oh my God, hide your kids. Nobody cares, okay? That's why nobody cares about anything that I am saying right now. And the few people that will, you know what they're going to do? They're going to tell you that I'm losing my shit. They're going to tell you that, oh man, he's mad. Oh, he's having a breakdown. We can't have this. And it's because they ignore everything I say when I am nice. So, pi, height equals 1.0. Width equals 1.0. Breadth equals 1.0. Why does pi equal 3.14159? Because of Nash's equilibrium. Equilibriums generate greater than sums. The 0.141592 is on the right of the decimal place. You're not dealing with whole numbers. You're dealing with the generated sum, the greater than sum that is generated from the equilibrium. You are dealing with the plot. The plot takes up space inside of the parameter. You have 3.0. You have a height, you have a width, you have a breadth, but you have generated a greater than sum. If you want to reverse engineer to verify, how do you find the circumference of a circle? By finding the hypotenuse. You literally can't figure out the circumference of a circle without finding the halfway point. Where the plot is, the plot thickens. So adding digits to pi is the equivalent to zooming in on the plot. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, etc. You're just zooming in the plot, making it bigger. That's all you're doing. Literally, all you are doing. When it comes to this equilibrium work, it's simple. Apply this to physics. Get away from math, that's fine. A sperm, an egg, and a womb, 1 to 1 to 1, make a baby that is a greater than sum. There's more life in that baby than there is in the individual components of the sperm, the egg, and the womb. When you put them together, you generate extra. Proton, neutron, electron, you make an atom. The life of the atom has more energy than the individual components of the proton, neutron, electron. That's what happens. You generate a greater than sum. Math isn't just numbers. They use it to apply it to the world around us, to physical things. Whether you're quantifying, whether you're qualifying, whether you're trying to fly through space or float through the water, it does not matter. Math applies. So there are basic fundamental rules at play that do not change. It has been 13 minutes. I have validated Godel and the rule of exceptions. I have proven my work from math to chemistry, whatever, biology, any field you want to pick. I can validate all of this. I can break it down with existing materials, tangible things that we can study right now. You're ignoring me. Why? You were ignoring me when I was nice. You were ignoring me when I was calm. You'll ignore me when I'm mean, unless it's beneficial to talk crap about me for being mean. Truth is, you deserve somebody to be mean to you. You deserve all of the hate if you were ignoring this kind of work and pretending that it does not exist because it does not suit the public narrative. It does not suit the people with prestige. All dichotomies have a third option. All equilibriums entail all three options. All equilibriums generate a greater than sum of these three options. Yes, no, maybe. Yes, no, maybe equals choice. Proton, neutron, electron. Proton, neutron, electron equals atom. Sperm, egg, womb. Sperm, egg, womb equals baby. Height, width, breadth. height, width, breadth equals area. Birth, death, life. Birth, death, life equals lifespan. It's the same format, the same equation. Doesn't matter what field you're dealing with, everything else extrapolates from that. And if you think I'm wrong, you think dichotomy logic is wrong, you think Godel's wrong, you think the rule of exceptions is wrong, and you think just about every other rule we have is wrong that we are currently using in order for me to be wrong. Bring it.